Segment 2, Golden Black Live. Brian Newbert joins me, and there's nothing going on in the world of Purdue athletics this week, or again, for that matter, Golden Black. It's just a quiet week, I suppose. But I guess that thing about coaching searches has certainly been a hot topic, and I think the first thing everybody needs to know is it's early.
It's very early. Something everybody probably ought to keep in mind is you're going to see a lot of reports about various candidates 3 days after the opening becomes official. There's going to be a lot of posturing. There's going to be a lot of coaches calling their buddies in the media to put their name out there to try to portray themselves as candidates for a job for which there really aren't any candidates yet. We can only assume. Purdue's probably got some sort of informal list, but they haven't reached out to anybody yet or anything like that. So when you see reports out there about this coach or that coach definitely being interested, the source on that is probably that coach or his agent or somebody who's just trying to keep that coach's name in circulation, keep that coach's name warmed up and hot so that not only that school gives them a look, but all the other openings out there are reading about this coach and that coach for when they have openings. That coach is staying top of mind. So everything out there to this point about candidates has been, I'm not saying these people won't end up being candidates, but I'm saying it's pretty premature at this point to say this coach is involved, that coach is involved. Everything at this point is just sort of speculation, assumption, and posturing.
Yeah, I think we've really tried, and certainly the list that you put together for the site is to say, here are coaches that may make some sense, and here's what might work for them and what might not. I would agree that Mike Babinski and company I'm sure they've started the process. Like you said, it can be a game of posturing. It can be a game of contacting intermediaries like agents. We've had that situation in years past here, certainly, when they transitioned from Danny Hope, even before Danny Hope was officially let go. So that's just the nature of the game. But be that as it may, we'll take you through some names. Just what are some names? I mean, obviously P.J. Fleck. Everybody's talking about him around the country. But what are some other names that might intrigue you as you look at the list that you've compiled?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It'll be pretty interesting to see how Purdue perceives Brock Spack. I mean, he makes a lot of sense. He would be a good Purdue fit. No coach in the country can say credibly, I know how to win at Purdue, like Brock Spack can, obviously. Whether or not that's a situation where he would have been okay to maintain things back in the day as opposed to rebuild things from the ground up, whether he'd be the sort of big personality, whether he'd be the sort of big name that Purdue might want to make a splash with, I don't know. So it'll be interesting to know how Purdue perceives him and where he fits into the process. I know he said some things about not expecting to hear from Purdue. I'd expect him to hear from Purdue, but he's a big heart on his sleeve guy. Yeah. Somebody asked him a question about Purdue. Purdue means a lot to him. It's a very emotionally invested situation, and I think he just spoke quickly. Other than that, I mean, it could be anybody. Jeff Brom down at Western Kentucky makes a lot of sense. If Purdue wants an offensive guy, Purdue's got to entertain. Mm-hmm. It's got to compete. It's got to win, but it's got to entertain too. And while Purdue's been losing, it's been highlighted by the fact that it just hasn't been very much fun to watch either.
And
I think Purdue, if you just entertain and lose, I think you're in a little bit better place with your fan base than you are right now. Maybe if you lose for 3.5 years the way you've lost, maybe that's not necessarily the case. But I think Purdue people want to be entertained, and Purdue wants to entertain not as much as they want to win. But I think that's a part of it. But it could be any number of guys. The name Troy Calhoun came up. That does make some sense. He's an offensive guy. He runs the option right now, but all of his surrogates out there getting his name out there are quick to point out he's got an NFL background, offensive background. You look at somebody like Skip Holtz down at Louisiana Tech is running a very high-powered offense, has some ties to Notre Dame. Mike Babinski has some ties to Notre Dame. That makes some sense. There are a lot of people out there who do make sense. It's just a matter of what exactly Purdue's looking for. We know they're looking for a recruiter. We're assuming they're going to look for an offensive guy. We don't know that for a fact, but it just comes down to Purdue narrowing its criteria and narrowing down a pretty significant list of people who would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, Mike Babinski talked about just wanting a guy that wants the job here, and that's something that people tend to say anyway, that wants to be at Purdue. That I don't think you want to read any more into that in terms of Whether that means, he's going to go well outside the Purdue family coaching tree, I feel relatively confident that that's going to be the case. There have been some names, the Les Miles of the world, even Lane Kiffin. We've had some people that, that would look at him, and yet, again, looks good on paper. Les Miles may not fit because of we're not age discrimination people, but he is an older guy, more of a defensive coach, has been criticized at LSU, probably lost his job at LSU for not having an innovative enough offense.
Archaic would be a good way to put it.
Lack of innovation, but those two or three guys, as we look at them, interesting, but certainly premature.
Well, Purdue's got to sit down and decide what they want, first of all. Purdue has to, be successful. They have to, capture their fans' hearts and minds, whatever else. But they also have to matter. They have to be relevant. They have to have some sort of identity. And there are certain coaches that you hire them, they automatically give you those things. Les Miles would be one of those people. He would be a national story.
Sure.
He'd be a media curiosity. It doesn't mean he's the best man for the job. There's a lot of reasons he doesn't look like he's the best man for the job. He's 62 years old, runs an archaic offense by reputation. Recruiting in Louisiana and when he was at Oklahoma State is a very different deal than recruiting to Purdue.
Right.
Very different, entirely different sport. But he would bring you name recognition. And he is one of the few guys that automatically, you hire him, Purdue is associated with that name, and everybody in the country knows who the coach at Purdue is. Mm-hmm. Everybody in the country has heard of Purdue. That's like the one guy. That doesn't necessarily mean he's the best man for the job. So Purdue's got to decide how much of a, quote-unquote splash they want to make, how much they want to win the press conference. It's a very difficult balance to strike, winning the press conference and winning games, and Purdue is probably going to want to do both.
Yeah, Les Miles, and again, this is just from older folks out there, the whole fact that that would be history repeating itself. Certainly a very similar tack that Purdue took in the late 80s when hiring Fred Akers, who was a national name at the time, had just had a big story in Sports Illustrated right before he was hired at Purdue. That's the kind of thing I will say that in the last week, Purdue's probably gotten more national attention because it's one of the few Power 5 jobs that's currently open that because now it is talking about who's on the hot seat, what coaches are going to be making moves. Purdue's had some more pub about this than it has about its football program in several years, really, in some ways.
I don't think athletic directors by nature, and I know Mike Babinski is this way, I don't think they prefer to make coaching changes in the middle of the season.
Yeah, Mike said so, yeah.
I think this was a unique circumstance because of where Purdue is with its followers, its donors, its fan base, its ticket buyers, etc., where I think this was a situation where I think Mike Babinski probably understood that, hey, here's an opportunity, if not a short opportunity, for me to make a real statement to our fan base to say, look, we're on top of this. We're committed to getting this right. We're not going to sit around and kind of let things play out when we know how it's going to end. There's no point in doing that. So this was an opportunity for Mike Babinski to do that, to maybe capture some hearts and minds, not necessarily right now, but also down the line when if people realize, hey, these guys are committed to getting this right. Perhaps that kind of resonates down the line a little bit with fans too. But also it earned Purdue some headlines. Mm-hmm. It earned Purdue some attention, and Purdue hasn't gotten any attention the last couple of years. If they have, it's been for all the wrong reasons. Not that this is the right reason, having to fire your coach, but at least it has people talking about Purdue again. So
yeah.
Anything you can get to have people talking about Purdue in some sort of positive or even neutral context after the results of the last 3.5 seasons can't hurt you.
Can't hurt. Jared Parker is somebody that you've come to know a little bit, certainly as a guy that has been Purdue's recruiting coordinator, and we've obviously known him as a coach. What do you think about what you've seen from Jared this week in terms of energy, et cetera, and just your view on that interim situation for him?
Yeah, I think Purdue needs something different. Obviously, given the results of the last 3.5 years, Purdue needs something different. Jared Parker is exactly the opposite of Darrell Hazel from an approach standpoint, from an ability to connect with his player standpoint. It wouldn't surprise me at all, and I don't know if it's sustainable, but I think he brings a new energy to this team, and I think they have a better chance now to play over their heads a little bit at Nebraska this weekend. I don't think they can win because I don't think they have the manpower, but I think they have a better chance today to play over their heads and give Nebraska a game than they did a week ago under Darrell Hazel. I think he's a guy people respond to. I think he has an infectious energy. And I think in the next 6 weeks, people are really going to come to like Jared Parker. And it's going to be a good problem to have because people are going to really like this guy. And then it's going to make it really hard when that day comes when he's got to go.
Yeah.
We're assuming that's going to be the case.
Yeah, Tom Dienhart, I think maybe wins the Persistence Award. He is on the line. Tom, you there?
Hey, yeah, long-time listener, first-time caller. Always want to say that.
Golly, the meter's running, man. We owe you a lot. So I'll get you if you ever stay in West Lafayette long enough, we'll take you for a Bruno's Pizza or the Triple X or something good. Tom, welcome to the show, and obviously this is a time of year earlier than ever in the history of Purdue football where it's been looking for a coach in the middle of a season. We've been throwing out some names, and that's kind of where we are with this right now. But you've certainly been around the college football world a long time. What names really jump out to you right now if you were going to put together Tom Dienhart's short list?
Well, you guys hit a lot of them there, obviously. I guess personally, my home run hires would be P.J. Fleck and Lane Kiffin. But I'll tell you what, I think we all realize Purdue can't mess this hire up for obvious reasons, and we also realize there's no sure things in life. Basically, anybody you hire is going to come with some type of potential fatal flaw. It could be a disaster. But to me, guys, the most sure thing out there is Brock Spack, honestly. The safest bet is Brock Spack. The smartest bet would be Brock Spack. For obvious reasons, I was listening to you guys. Brian laid him out. You all know his background. You know his affinity for Purdue. Not a sexy hire, obviously, and having a tough year this year. But again, the guy knows how to coach football teams and would want to be a Purdue and loves Purdue. And I don't think anybody of any of these candidates can say that. But again, we'll see what happens with him. But yeah, Philip Montgomery, we heard his name, the Tulsa head coach. I wonder if being a Baylor may have tainted his candidacy. And you guys probably saw recently Bo Pelini's name come up. What do you think of that?
Yeah, and I'll start. I'm not a big fan only because I know a little bit about his disposition, and I have to be. That's probably puts me in a different light from my perspective on him. Obviously, and also known as a defensive guy. But so he's not. He would not be high on my list, but. He's obviously had, he's seen the big time at Nebraska and now at Youngstown State. But Brian, what's your view on both?
I'm big on relevant experience in situations like this. I'm big on getting guys on the way up because they're working towards something, and that gives them the energy you need for a rebuild. When you take a guy who's recycled, from a bigger program, all due respect, look at what happened with Purdue's last staff. You get guys from Florida State, you get guys from the NFL, you get guys from all over the place. They get to Purdue. They haven't been coaching those players. They haven't been recruiting to that sort of infrastructure. I always think, and it's not an age thing. It's an energy thing. I think you're always better off in situations like this, and that this is not an overnight rebuild. You need somebody with some energy about them, not somebody who is used to coaching at one level and now is coming to a different level, and might want to be getting back to that first level.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
And Alan and I talked about this once too. That very same point, Brian. Where Alan told me, and I agree with both of you, that getting a guy ascending on the way up is most desirable for Purdue. And Brian, you laid those reasons out why. That's why I'm not that excited about Greg Schiano either. We've seen his name mentioned too. So again, it's early. What direction to go, I don't know. I've heard some rumblings about a search firm. You guys heard anything about a search firm being used?
As of Sunday night, Mike Babinski did not commit to it. I guess we've been kind of assuming all along Purdue would hire one. They used one to hire Mike Babinski himself, so I'm figuring if the university used one to hire an AD, they would bring one in on some level for the football coaching search. Don't know that for a fact. We know Babinski used one at Georgia Tech to hire Josh Pastner. Whether that was Babinski's call, whether that was the university's call, we don't know, but the last hire he had to make in his last job, he did use one.
Yeah.
I guess I would give bet that he's probably going to hire one. And, you guys have looked at his background, who he knows, where he's been. We all know we like to hire people we've worked with before. who we are familiar with. So he's never hired a football coach from what I can gather, right, guys?
He would have been probably at Akron.
At
way back
Akron,
in
I
the
think he
day,
did
yeah.
well because he fired Jerry Faust and had to hire, and I don't know who he hired. It would have been 1994 or 1995 when he did that. So that's one guy that's interested to us is and again just throwing names out, and you know a lot of coaches. Skip Holtz. What do you know about Skip, and why would you see him? And again, Babinski obviously was at Notre Dame in the athletic department, working in the business and ticket office at the time that the Irish won the national championship in 1988. He probably has a relationship with Lou Holtz. Probably has a relationship with Skip. But how do you view that?
Yeah, interesting name. He was a hot name back
Yeah.
in 2006, 7, or 8. Obviously, he got the South Florida
South
job.
Florida, yeah.
Right.
And that didn't work out down there. But prior to that, he had a quick run at UConn that didn't work out, rehabbed his career, then got the East Carolina job, and off and away he was. So, yeah, interesting. He's probably about 50 years old, 51 years old. Yeah, I mean, comes with some name brand recognition, some Midwestern familiarity, a lot of head coaching experience. So I think he's a guy that would be an interesting candidate, and one that I would definitely consider. And who knows, maybe in the end, one of the better guys to really look at.
Have you been around Jeff Brom at all, Western Kentucky, and obviously Louisville, et cetera? What do you think and know about him?
Great offensive mind. The one thing I'm told, or was told, a couple of things. He's real tight with Danny Hope. I don't know what impact that would have. I'm sure Danny Hope wouldn't speak highly of Purdue.
No.
And number 2, I heard he's waiting for Bobby Petrino to leave Louisville. The minute Petrino leaves Louisville, Brom's going to get that job. Most people think in Derby City.
Yeah.
Will Petrino leave? Who knows?
His
but
track
his
record.
track record.
Yeah.
So again, those are a couple of things just to consider about Brom. And having not said those things, he would be an awesome candidate for a lot of reasons. His offense is spectacular. He's a young up-and-coming coach, fits the profile. He'd be great. I tell you what, too, Brian talked about the eclectic staff that Hayes Webb put together. And you know what? One of the things that seemed to make Joe Tiller so effective in 1997 was basically that entire staff came from Laramie to West Lafayette. What a boon that was. I don't know if Purdue could get a similar situation where you can get a head coach bring almost his entire staff with him. I mean, they have continuity. They know what they want. They know their system. I think that was a big edge for Purdue back then and really helped that program get off the ground right away.
Well, it wasn't just the fact they all came from Wyoming. So many of those guys were young. They were on their way up. They were hungry as hell. They were grinders. They really recruited well. They had so much energy. And one of the things Joe Tiller was so good at was identifying great young assistant coaches and getting them to Purdue. Now, you couldn't always keep them here for more than 3 or 4 years, but that's a good problem to have. And when the program kind of plateaued, in the 2000s, he kind of ran out of people to hire. So that's when you started bringing in the guys who'd been around a lot longer. Maybe the energy dipped a little bit. People always say that, Joe Tiller was out of gas at the end. I'm not saying he was what he once was at the end, but the other part of that was his staff. When you run out of the young guys and all of a sudden your staff gets less energized, I think that really affected the program too.
Yeah.
He was very frustrated by an inability to pay those guys what they wanted to be paid.
Right.
Yeah.
And he lost a lot of good coaches like Bob DeBess, among others, because of it along the way. So it's key. We know you're only as good as the people around you. We all know that.
Right.
So that'll be key, that staff, as we know, whoever they can cobble together around that head coach.
And Bob DeBest, a great name out of the past, and Purdue's recruiting coordinator. And I don't know, what was Bob's last year? Brian, you remember 2005?
2004 or 5, one or the other. I remember he almost doubled his salary to coach less players and hold less titles at Texas A&M back then.
Yeah.
He went to Texas A&M. He was wide receivers coach and recruiting coordinator at Purdue. He went to Texas A&M and coached running backs. That was it, and he almost doubled his salary.
Yeah. Good problem to have for Bob.
Yes.
Well,
it's not a problem.
Yeah, no, it's not a problem. It's a good solution to a problem. One other name, and again, this is ludicrous, but just a more of a talking point than anything else, Kevin Sumlin. And I totally get that Kevin's team's ranked and playing one of its biggest games. And no way on the radar screen at this point because of where the Aggies are right now. But things can change, and things did change. Can change in a period of 2 or 3 weeks down there. We've all known Kevin for a long time. What are your thoughts if the opportunity, if some things would change in his situation at A&M and the Aggies go south here in the next several weeks? Any possibilities there?
Again, it'd be fantastic. I guess we know the connections with Purdue. Obviously, former walk-on, and in the mid '80s, the track record as a coach speaks for itself too, guys. But everybody likes to come home. But we have the factor of taking a step down from a mega program like Texas A&M to Purdue. But maybe coming back to your alma mater, you're going to have passion and energy to want to see that your old beloved school get better again and have you ride in on a white horse and save the day. So maybe stepping down wouldn't be a big issue as far as motivation and work ethic would go for someone. So, again, that would be a heck of a gift if the circumstances unfolded where he was available and he was interested, and he would want to come home to Indiana and coach his alma mater. So, I guess we'll stay tuned and see what happens.
That's weeks away from even being possible, though, in my view. Brian, go ahead.
If this unlikely scenario even unfolds, Kevin, if I know Kevin the way I think I know Kevin, he is going to want to go somewhere he can win ASAP. Not that any coach wouldn't. And if he leaves A&M, I just don't know how he'd perceive Purdue. Home is home. But for the past 20 years, Kevin's home has been Texas, has been Oklahoma, has been the Big 12, has been the SEC. And let's say, completely hypothetically, we know Tom Herman's leaving Houston. If Kevin Sumlin leaves Texas A&M, does he leverage to go back to Houston, win 3 years, and all of a sudden after 3 years he's back in the SEC or he's in the Big 12?
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like – or what about the NFL? I mean, if Kevin Sumlin leaves Texas A&M, that's going to be the proverbial bees on the pop can, as Matt Painter said. There's going to be people all over him. Just because you leave a job like that doesn't mean there's not going to be 20 other jobs that could conceivably come your way.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Maybe the NFL is his next step, I guess. I guess someone's probably 52 years old.
Yeah.
His father passed away within the last year. He's got a boatload of money in the bank, guys. And he's been at the top, quote unquote, working in the SEC. Sometimes money's not everything. He's got a lot of it, and so maybe there's still, like I said, an emotional tie to where you would want to come back to a place like Purdue where you coached or where you played as well. So again, it's a long shot, probably not going to happen, but sometimes money's not everything. He's not at this point in his career where I have to think that's going to be the be-all, end-all, or maybe I'm wrong. You never know.
Yeah. One last question. Go ahead, Brian.
What do you think of Dino Babers? Do you think there's any chance he'd consider it after 1 year at Syracuse?
That'd be great. Wouldn't that be awesome?
He's like that. Seems like straight out of Central Casting to me, with the offense, with the Purdue connection.
It's just too bad the move wasn't made last year. You could have hired Babers right from Bowling Green. You obviously coached under Coletto.
Right.
The offense is really right up Purdue's alley. So I don't know if he's a guy who would leave a program after 1 year. But I think the AD who hired him went to Minnesota.
Right, that's correct.
Right.
So Babers is working for an AD that didn't even hire him. So you have to compare Purdue and Syracuse's situations, which has more, I guess, has more potential.
Right.
So again, why not make that phone call?
Make them say no.
Yeah, make them say no. Babers would be, I think, a great hire, just a great coach.
Yeah.
All right, Tom. Well, hey, you've gone above and beyond the call. We may have this conversation here in another 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to guess, because this is one thing about this timetable is likely not to have a whole lot of, there'll be a lot of guessing going on, but really this is going to be something that's going to come to fruition from about the second the old Oak and Bucket game ends for Purdue, and to another couple weeks after that till you get a guy hired, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, ideally, how soon is the head coach in place once the final gun goes off in the bucket game?
Yeah. I think it's going to happen. They're going to try to do it as quickly as possible, but again, it may be a mad dash for talent at that point. All right, Tom.
Call me up anytime, fellas.
Well, all right, we'll do it again, and
Thanks,
we appreciate it very much, and have a good rest of the weekend. I know there'll be college football on your plate throughout the entire weekend. Thanks again, Tom.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, we're going to take a 2-minute break, come back for about 8 to 10 minutes of basketball talk as the Boilermakers continue getting ready for their first exhibition game. And Brian has been down to Mackey Arena a few times to watch them practice. So we'll take a couple-minute break, and we'll be back on Gold and Black Live.